This is our severe weather briefing. As always, I'm going to try to keep this under 35 minutes. Let's hope I actually can. This is concerning today's severe weather, but if we have time at the end, I will be able to talk a little bit about tomorrow's severe weather. There will be, again, briefing sometime early afternoon tomorrow. Getting right into it, you can see that essentially the entire area is under this level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk for severe storms. That is driven mostly by wind. You'll see that in a minute. It does, however, depend on where you are, the threat of tornadoes would be. Enhanced typically means that storms are going to start to become widespread. I have an entire map on the wall that I don't think you can see. But numerous severe storms possible or likely, more widespread and or persistent. A few may be intense. They're storms you see once or twice per year. We've seen this several times per year now. Getting into the tornado risk, you can see that these storms are generally going to cause the most tornado risk in this 10% area, more in western Illinois, Iowa, southwestern Wisconsin. That's really going to be where we see them. However, Chicago itself is under a 2%. It's low, but it's not zero. Between that is that 5% area, the brown. It's, again, low. It's enough to constitute a tornado watch. And then this is conditional intensity 1, meaning a few tornadoes may be up to EF2 strength. Looking at hail, that will be the lowest risk. 15 to 29% actually tornado is, but 15 to 29% pretty much until you get to Iowa, and then it gets up to that 30 to 44% zone. So some large hail, but it's not going to be too big. And wind, the main driver for this enhanced risk, 30 to 44%. Conditional intensity 1, essentially just meaning some winds may be a little destructive. I do want to go into the National Weather Service. There are 3 offices to cover, so it's going to be a little hard to do, but I think it'll be good enough. There are going to be maybe 2 rounds of severe thunderstorms today. Main threat, damaging to destructive winds. There's another threat tomorrow. Tornadoes would be the main threat, almost. Outside of the storms, again, heat indices of 95 to potentially 100 degrees. This is for National Weather Service Chicago. Again, we will cover all 3. This is, again, today's threat. Generally, 1 to 7 p.m. is our highest confidence and severe threat. That's why I've started this stream so early, is because the further west I go, I cover a large area. I want to be able to get every area in before the storms hit. So, again, 1 to 7, main threat. The severe threats would be damaging winds, some localized destructive winds, especially in our enhanced risk, which is many areas. Do I expect a moderate? Not today, but I think moderate is possible tomorrow. Timing-wise, again, 1 to 4. How hot will it be? Depends on where you are. Generally, the heat index will be between 95 and 100 for most areas. Main storm arrival for more western, northwestern Illinois is 1 to 4. Chicago between 3 and 6. That's what we've been watching several days. And then we kind of get into tomorrow's threat, which I want to save for tomorrow. Though we will have a flooding threat today through Thursday, the threat for flash flooding is going to be higher tomorrow, mostly because the storms today will get the soil wet and it won't have enough time to dry. Do want to point out the storm planning timeline. At this point, we're now the day of for today, but I would especially look out for the day before for tomorrow. Adjust plans, make sure your phone can receive wireless emergency alerts, have your shelter, everything. I do have a video all on how to enable wireless emergency alerts. Unfortunately, I don't have one for Android. I only have the iPhone, which is unfortunate, but that's the only ones. Outflow dominant. Yeah, if the storms do go outflow dominant, they should increase the threat. I think main reason they hold back a lot on storms just because they don't know exactly how it's going to happen until afterwards. But it is definitely a chance that threats increase. I don't think it would be an upgrade to moderate. I think it would just be a slight adjustment of the current threats, though. Going up to our Milwaukee office, if anybody is in southern Wisconsin, you can see for them, multiple rounds of storms. Today is going to be the highest confidence for Milwaukee, but even this evening, you could still see some. Again, the same risks that I basically went over before, except that 5% does extend to the lakefront for specifically the Milwaukee area, all the wind threat. For your Milwaukee area, 12 to 2, it'll arrive. It'll be out between 5 and 7 p.m., the peak being 2 to 5. Highest threat, again, wind. That's what you're going to see all the time. This evening, then, if you are in Milwaukee, you could see, again, those other rounds. Now the threats slightly decrease 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. Still, though, should be in around 7, out by 1. And then this is Thursday's outlook, hinting at it, but you're not going to see the full thing until the short later today and tomorrow, or unless I can get this done early, I can show a bit of tomorrow. Now we go into our Davenport office, the final National Weather Service office. Does show Thursdays again. Multiple episodes of severe weather. As always, everybody's been repeating the same thing. Very warm. Heat index in the 90s today. Possibly again Thursday. I think definitely Thursday. Again, what's uncertain with timing both today and tomorrow is timing. Storm mode is more known today. Corridors of highest threat and the main tornado threat window. It is enhanced risk again for that entire area. Let's get into the storm arrival. This is our HRRR model. I like to show between 2 and 3 forecast models each time. We can see that storms have fired off, well, not fired off, but they have developed in western Iowa. So those will be our severe storms as they move through. They start to impact the area I cover between noon and 1. If we look at our severe weather, our CAPE, that is the instability in the air. You can see that where those storms are, it's actually kind of low. It's still got enough, but especially just watching this area, Milwaukee and Chicago with those very high CAPE, that's not all that goes into severe storms, though. There's a lot more that goes in. If we look at our simulated sounding, right where these cells are, we can kind of get a look. It's not, again, thinking tornado, really, which is interesting, given what the SPC says, but they analyze multiple models, and that's what I'm going to do today. So, just severe primary hazard would likely be that wind and hail. As they move through Chicago and Illinois, we can see, I'll set it up, Princeton's another populated area. Severe, again, not really tornado. The main reason is the shear. Today is going to be low. Tomorrow it's going to be relatively high. That's the main reason. You can see that they arrive in Chicago between 4 and 5 p.m. Our HRRR soundings, again showing severe, but no tornado threat. Of course, a severe storm could always develop a tornado, but it's not the primary hazard in the case of the HRRR. I will also go into our temperatures today. I will go actually just push heat index. 9 a.m. This is already past. Here we are at 10 a.m. Just about 10 a.m. here. 90s pretty much the entire area, and it gets even hotter as we go through. You can see this cooler area is actually where those storms kind of moved in. We will reach a high of 100 heat index just outside of DuPage County in Illinois. Very close, 100 in Cook County, Chicago, that area later today. And then those storms do bring that cooled off air. but it doesn't cool off too much. It only drops into the 60s, some areas even the 70s. And I will go into tomorrow's heat index. You can see how it goes back up. Not as much in the hundreds, though. That's the one thing to keep an eye on. It's not going to get directly into the 100s. Currently, that could always change. Looking at our Rufus A model, this is another really accurate model that I like, especially for timing and exact threats. Again, they show those storms in Iowa. That's all good. It shows more these somewhat more discrete cells here in western Illinois, eastern Iowa, and more up there in north central Iowa. I'm going to put over that sounding again to show. This one only thinks marginal severe thanks to the lack of shear. This one shows very little shear, at least for the Davenport area. And then arriving at Chicago, agreeing with the timing again, around between 4 and 5. So models, we do know that consistent timing is starting to come up. Chicago, again, mostly just pointing out severe weather, not tornado. We watch. This is another round of storms. That is going to be your main wind threat. So there could be several watches today. Let's settle over Walworth County. You can see, again, severe, no tornado. Arriving in Chicago around between 10 and 11. That is definitely going to be a wind threat. You can tell based off of this kind of bowing shape. It's a very common thing with those types of storms. Looking at our Chicago sounding. Again, severe. You always have to at least watch out for the threat of tornadoes, but as of right now, models aren't really pointing to that. I think the main reason is just the outflow. They think it might move through, which is why they're keeping it. That'll get adjusted. The final one, this is the NAM, North American Mesoscale. These are all actually being removed. The HRRR, NAM, that's all being removed in place of the Rufus model. We can see that in this case, a round of bowing storms do move through. I don't like NAM as much, though. It tends to overreact with storms. But it does get timing around 5 p.m. for Chicago again. So the best part about all three models is that they do agree. We don't have the Rufus model just yet. Overall, that is the main threat. I do take questions, and since we have enough time left, we've been streaming for 20 minutes, I say under 35 or less, we can take a look at tomorrow's threat. So again, tomorrow there will be a briefing, probably around 1 p.m. I haven't exactly settled on a time just yet, but we can see that enhanced risk placed over much of Illinois itself, good portion of southeast Wisconsin, great portion of western Illinois. The tornado threat currently, I will show a comparison, currently compares close to the July 15th, 2024 derecho that brought a record-breaking 32 tornadoes to the National Weather Service Chicago area. Currently, it's under the same risk with wind and tornado. The factors that would limit the busting of tomorrow would be, depending on what time storms leave in the morning, if storms go through in the afternoon, how will that cause? I'll show that on the map in a couple minutes. Again, we'll have better information tomorrow. But this does very closely resemble the July 15th derecho, tomorrow's storm. Only difference is thanks to our conditional intensity categories, we're not in a moderate. We would be in a moderate if we were. I will pull up that comparison. This is the day 2 outlook, though. So we have to at least consider that it's a little different. this was the morning outlook, but by afternoon we realized that this storm was going to be bad. Actually, not the 1630. We recognized it, afternoon. I pressed morning. They did not actually hatch the risk, but we did have a similar looking wind risk for that area. Now going into looking what are busting, what could bust our storms tomorrow. This is the HRRR. We can see that storms would move through Iowa in the morning. They will avoid Chicago, which would be the area where I am most concerned with. And then we can see these are specifically more discrete cells forming on the HRRR. And they kind of continue that discrete until you kind of bow off once they reach Chicago between 6 and 7 p.m. It is showing specifically a tornado threat for Chicago. Yesterday it was showing particularly dangerous situation tornado on the Rufus model. We'll take a look at that model as well. But overall, looking at our sounding, we can see that tornado number. The shear is it's pretty good on most levels. The SRH, that's storm relative helicity, that enables storms to spin. They're all in great numbers. The EHI, which combines the SRH and CAPE, is also relatively high. You can see that CAPE upwards in the 3,000, so very unstable air. This is a very concerning number. The SIG severe number, generally speaking, over 20,000 means significant severe, 10,000 severe, and as you get higher, it means more significant severe. Obviously, that's why it's called significant severe. 71,504 meters cubed per second cubed. It's a relatively high number that we will have to keep an eye on across models. Supercells are going to be common. The SIN is very low. That's convective inhibition. So one thing I do want to watch. If it does depend. These storms have a lot of energy expected with them. So the convective inhibition may not matter. They may be able to keep their strength and stay mature for longer. But it is low, which means that storms might fire when they're still a little too weak. So that is something to keep an eye on. Princeton, yesterday was an area that the models flagged for PDS tornado, so I do want to take a look at that area. Standard tornado, very similar numbers to Chicago. So you can see that arrival time. I may actually move the briefing tomorrow, given this latest model. I'm going to move it tomorrow to about 2 p.m. I think that'll be a lot better to get word out. Still give enough time, but keep everything accurate. Rufus tells a bit of a different story, which is why I wanted to do one. This one does show storms moving through. That's something that I want to look at the CAPE for. You can see that the storm's CAPE drops and it kind of doesn't return on the surface level. On the most unstable level, it kind of does stay, but not as strong. It's not as strong as it was, which is why we're specifically holding back. I think that's why they're holding back on a moderate risk, and that's what could bust our storms. However, the Rufus model, projecting none now, thanks to those storms. We'll keep an eye on that storm as it comes through. I don't know about this one, though, because no other model really flagged it. HRRR is another very accurate model. The NAM model doesn't project it. So I think that probably won't happen. Yeah, there's really not a single model, except for Rufus, that says that. So I don't really think that that's going to happen with those. We can see around 8 p.m. This is a later time on a different model, all being tested out. So just stay weather aware, subscribe to receive updates on this severe weather. I will post a short later today when we get the SPC update, more updates from the models. I'll post a short tomorrow reminding about the briefing. Might even post a second short. I'll do the briefing. Depending on what time the briefing is, I think I'm going to do it at 2 p.m. If a watch is issued after that, I will have that all posted in shorts. And I will continue to track this system. Subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I will take any last-minute questions. There's like a lag here, so when you get it, it's a little while after I get it. So just know that when you send it, I will eventually respond. All right, doesn't look like there are any more questions. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to stay aware of these storms. Be careful. I do think a moderate's possible. Thank you so much for watching.